Well, well, Ryan Lame. You ready for your big deep dive into the Authority this week?
You know my name's not Ryan.
Lot of pressure on you, man. I mean, people have asked you to do this one for years now. What's gonna happen if the video sucks? Or better yet, what's gonna happen if you actually like the storyline?
That won't be an issue. The wrestling business loves having authority figures on screen, and for good reason. After all, somebody's making all these matches we see every week, and it's nice to place a face with whoever's pulling the strings in kayfabe. I mean, WWE's gone so long without an official GM or commissioner running things, they promoted Adam Pearce out of nowhere. That's how much they love that gimmick. But the biggest reason promotions keep going to the well of evil authority figure all these years has to be the Steve Austin-Vince McMahon rivalry, the most successful storyline in wrestling history. Eric Bischoff may have done the evil executive shtick first, but it was Mr. McMahon who took the idea to new uncharted heights while feuding with the Rattlesnake. It's the template on which every single wrestler versus boss angle has been based on ever since. And brother, there have been a lot of those in the last 20 years. Since Austin McMahon, no authority figure angle in WWE had as much longevity and prominence on the product as, well, the Authority. Led by Triple H and Stephanie McMahon, this supergroup went through many changes, but through nearly 3 years in existence, it was unavoidable and affected practically every storyline in the company at the time. Many comparisons have been made between the Authority and Vince McMahon's corporation, or the McMahon-Helmsley regime, but while all those groups were overused, there seems to be a much more negative connotation with the more modern stable than the other two, and this week we're going to find out why.
No, you won't. Authority was awesome.
Our story begins in the summer of 2013 when WWE Champion John Cena handpicked Daniel Bryan as his SummerSlam opponent. Bryan had been on a roll since the breakup of Team Hell No, picking up some big wins and becoming one of the most popular performers in the company. This matchup was a no-brainer. As SummerSlam neared, Mr. McMahon made it known that Bryan didn't fit his vision of a superstar, while his son-in-law and COO Triple H supported D-Bry. But it was all a ruse. On that fateful August evening, Bryan beat Cena in a great match to win the title for the very first time, until...
Oh my God! Oh my God! No! What the hell? What did Triple H do?
Quick as a limpet, the H-Man turned his back on the guy he previously supported, allowing Money in the Bank winner Randy Orton to swoop in and claim the title for himself. It's the exact same thing we saw 2 SummerSlams prior, but with somewhat different ingredients and an equally disappointing result. The following night on Raw, Orton was declared the face of WWE, while Bryan was called a B-plus player. On that same show, The Shield, who were all champions in their own right, joined as enforcers, making the Authority official. The line had clearly been drawn. Anybody who disapproved of the group's methods stood the risk of unemployment. And while Daniel took the fight to the Authority in his quest to regain the championship, he needed an ally, somebody who could help him fight those corporate overlords, somebody with strength, conviction, a backbone, a guy other than him. Aside from Bryan, the first wrestler to speak out against the Authority was The Big Show. Coming off his 14th or 15th face turn after a 3-month hiatus, Show was punished for his insolence by facing Rollins, Ambrose, and Reigns in a handicap match on Raw. But things got even worse for the big man, as that same month, Show suffered the biggest punishment of all. He was forced to sit ringside and watch an entire episode of SmackDown. I mean, the poor guy couldn't even look at his phone. The humanity! The next week on Raw, it was revealed that The Big Show, who by this point had been making millions every year since '99, was broke. Keep in mind, this was years before he got that sweet Netflix deal. As a result, he became an indentured servant of Trips and Steph, facing a firing if he disobeyed. He was forced to beat up his friends in order to save his job, and was forced to cry on camera, like, a lot. You know, it's easy to make fun, but seriously, how many actors out there would kill for the ability to cry on command like that? At around the same time, a young Cody Rhodes found himself in the crosshairs of the Authority after speaking out against Triple H. A loss to Orton meant that Cody was fired, but before he could bleach his hair blonde and go on an independent world tour, his older brother Goldust came back to the company to fight for Cody's honor. Dustin would also lose to Orton, and suddenly, both were out of a job. Finally, it came time for Dusty Rhodes to step in and advocate for his sons. He couldn't get Cody and Dustin's jobs back, but he did receive a KO punch from a tearful Big Show. Damn, man, the feels.
That stuff was great, man. I miss the old days when we used to be able to make fun of him when he didn't work for us.
A couple weeks later, the Rhodes family confronted the Authority regarding their futures, which featured this unscripted moment by Dusty, which apparently got him a ton of heat backstage. And God forbid anyone, even Dusty Rhodes, shut down the billion-dollar princess. Meanwhile, Daniel Bryan got his rematch for the title against Randy Orton at Night of Champions. He'd end up winning and regaining the belt, only for it to be taken away the next night due to a fast count by the referee. Utilizing a Dusty finish while also involving Dusty Rhodes in an adjacent part of the storyline? Okay, that's pretty clever. Bryan and Orton would fight once again for the vacant championship at Battleground, on the same night that Cody and Dustin won their jobs back after a highly emotional match against The Shield. The main event for the title had a no-contest finish after a crazed Big Show attacked both Bryan and Orton, finally freeing himself from the shackles of oppression by the Authority. Literally, because they fired him the next night for it. But Show would keep making things difficult for the Authority, going on a punching spree for weeks, even costing Rollins and Reigns the tag titles against the Rhodes brothers, who would eventually drift away from their feud with the Authority. But seriously, how is security missing the Big Show as he breaks into arenas and makes it to ringside? So finally, the fate of the vacant championship was decided at Hell in a Cell, only this time, Shawn Michaels was named the special guest referee. And...
Whoa, sweet chin music! Shawn's gonna count the 1, 2, 3!
So not only does that make 4 bullshit finishes for the title across 4 straight pay-per-views, the last one wasn't even an original bullshit finish. Screwing people over is like all Shawn Michaels does as a guest ref. Why do they keep hiring him for that job? It's worth pointing out that Hell in a Cell also saw the return of Kane. Fresh off his filming of See No Evil 2, the Big Red Monster came back to get revenge on the Wyatt family for a minute, before suddenly changing his allegiance to the Authority, losing his mask once again and becoming the Director of Operations. It was here that Corporate Kane was born, another chapter in the long, winding, confusing backstory of The Undertaker's long-lost half-brother who was believed to have died in a fire, also at one point had magical powers, before training to become a wrestler and accidentally killing his girlfriend in a car accident. They made it work. As the Wyatts kept Daniel Bryan occupied for a bit, Show now became the primary good guy against this evil reign. After weeks of invading shows, the Authority finally acquiesced to him, bringing him back to the company and allowing him to wrestle Orton for the title at Survivor Series in a losing effort. But never fear, Super Cena's here. Back from injury, John Cena made short work of Alberto Del Rio to win the world title at Heck in a Sec, then declared it was time to rid the company of this faulty 2-championship system.
Because I believe it's time there should be only one champion.
It's all fine and dandy, but I don't seem to recall John ever saying anything like that back when he was the champion on Raw all that time in the mid-2000s. And so, a Unification match was announced for TLC. A week beforehand, they did their big Ascension ceremony. Sorry, Connor and Victor, it's not your time yet. And during this segment, WWE got hit with a harsh dose of reality when the fans in attendance made their voices heard.
We're going to suspend him above this ring. For one of you, it's the last time you'll be known as champion.
Meanwhile, I am the greatest superstar.
Orton would be the one to unify the 2 titles at TLC and would go on to retain the belt at the Royal Rumble and the Elimination Chamber pay-per-views. Also during the Rumble, the Rhodes brothers lost the tag belts to the returning New Age Outlaws, proving that the Authority was just the McMahon-Helmsley regime in horrifying HD. That pay-per-view ended when former world champ Batista returned to win the Rumble match itself. And fans were pissed.
Batista's going to WrestleMania!
The moment that Rey Mysterio emerged as number 30, the fans in Pittsburgh turned on the entire match and just about anyone not named Daniel Bryan. It was clear that fans wanted Bryan to go on to the main event of WrestleMania, but it seems WWE had their universe mode set on simulation, carrying on without seeming to care what the audience thought. Looking back, it was really an indictment on the company's entire booking philosophy for WrestleMania main events at the time. When The Rock helped Manias 27 through 29 do great numbers, they clearly thought bringing in another former wrestler turned movie star would have the same success. But Batista was in the right place at the wrong time. By this point, the Yes train was full speed ahead and there was no slowing its momentum. You probably know this part of the story well enough. Daniel joins, then leaves the Wyatt family, occupies Raw to get his title shot, wrestles Triple H in the opener of Mania 30, overcomes about 23 different obstacles in the main event, and wins it all, becoming the champion once again. Yay for that!
I know, right? Pretty awesome that our 8-month booking plan finally paid off that night.
I'm sorry, what?
Well, you know, our long-term booking we're so well known for. That was the plan from the start, for Bryan to overcome all these odds and finally win the big one at WrestleMania. Patience pays off. Moving on.
But you know that's not true. I mean, nothing you guys did from October to February made any sense toward that goal, and why would you bring Batista back in the first place if the original plan wasn't to make him champion again?
Patience pays off. Moving on.
At around this time, the Shield had begun their babyface turn, seen by how they mollywomped Kane and the Outlaws at Mania. Take that, Attitude Era! Their turn to the light was solidified the next night on Raw when they saved Daniel from an authoritarian beatdown. And 1 week after that, Triple H, Batista, and Randy Orton came together to bring back Evolution as a subsidiary of the Authority. Evolution and the Shield battled for the next 2 months, peaking with a star-making performance for the younger trio at Payback. 1 night later, Batista quit the company just in time for Seth Rollins to betray his fellow Justice Hounds, dissolving the Shield and rejoining the Authority in the process. Well, that's a bummer to see the group break up just as they're hitting their stride as good guys. Oh well, at least Daniel's champion, and oh god, that's right, his first program after Mania was against Demon Kane, where he looked like a chump the whole time. Well, at least he can move on from that and stay strong as the champion.
No.
Not long after his match with Kane at Extreme Rules, Bryan lost all strength in his arm and was written off to undergo neck surgery. After a month of will they or won't they, Bryan was ultimately stripped of his title on the June episode of Raw, a crushing blow for his fans who waited so long to see him get his moment in the sun, only to come crashing down to earth a mere 2 months later. On the same night, Seth Rollins won Money in the Bank with help from Kane. John Cena outlasted 5 other opponents, including Kane and Randy Orton, in a separate ladder match to win the Vacant championship. So, good news, the Authority's denied yet again. Bad news, Lol Cena wins. Just great trade-off there. Quick, let's give Stephanie something to do. At Payback, Brie Bella quit the company in support of her husband Daniel, so Stephanie spent weeks punishing sister Nikki by putting her in several handicap matches. Things finally came to a head at SummerSlam when Stephanie returned to the ring for her first proper match in 11 years to take on Brie. And folks, let me tell you, it cannot be overstated just how strong Stephanie was portrayed at this point. During the Authority's heyday, she repeatedly talked down to wrestlers, always got the last word, would often slap wrestlers, and get about zero comeuppance for her actions. Forget Triple H. At this time, it was Stephanie who was the real shovel artist. Things never got this bad during the McMahon-Austin feud. Almost every week, Vince would throw some hurdle in Austin's way, and the night would still end with Austin hitting Vince with a stunner, making him piss his pants, or destroying his car. Vince was more than willing to embarrass himself to get Austin over. But when Stephanie verbally castrated a wrestler, that was that, and there was no time for a retort. If she got mad when Dusty Rhodes made her talk to the hand, you can imagine no normal performer could ever get away with something like that. She was nigh invincible. Even on the rare occasion when she did get her just desserts, there was always some caveat to it to protect her or to minimize the impact. Before SummerSlam, Steph got thrown into a pool of mud by non-wrestler Vickie Guerrero on Vickie's way out of the company, soon forgotten about. She was arrested for putting her hands on Brie Bella when she was a fan, but of course returned from jail angrier than ever. According to former writer Kevin Eck, they almost went as far as posting a mugshot of Steph, but the idea was shot down by Triple H because the belief was, without proper context, it could hurt her reputation as WWE's chief brand officer. Clearly, no one had a problem with the chief brand officer being one of the most hated heels in the company. By the way, a McMahon posing for a kayfabe mugshot was no problem for Papa Vince. Again, see the difference here? As for SummerSlam, Roman Reigns beat Randy Orton, Seth Rollins beat Dean Ambrose in a kick-ass lumberjack match, the Authority's hired gun Brock Lesnar obliterated John Cena to become the new champion, but most important of all, Leather Queen Stephanie beat Brie Bella after Nikki turned on her own sister. This betrayal brought about another incredibly stupid angle that would be forgotten about months later, but that's for a whole other video.
I wish you died in the womb!
After SummerSlam, the Authority's numbers would grow even larger with the addition of backstage producers Jamie Noble and Joey Mercury. As J&J Security, the two pretty much worked as comic foils and henchmen for Rollins. As much as I enjoyed their work in this role, they had nothing on Patterson and Briscoe. Seth and Dean continued their ludicrously one-sided feud, culminating at Hell in a Cell when a Bray Wyatt hologram cost Dean the match. While Dean would end the year being done in by an exploding television, yes, that was an actual finish to an actual match, Authority OG Randy Orton began to have tension with Seth over who was loved more by their adoptive parents. That October, the Viper could finally stand no more and attack the new Golden Boy, which led to him getting curb stomped off TV for several months. Everything came to a head at that year's Survivor Series. After John Cena rejected his offer to join the group, Triple H laid down the gauntlet and challenged him to a Survivor Series match. If Team Authority won, all of Cena's teammates would be fired, but if Team Cena won, the Authority would be out of power. After a whole lot of lineup changes in the weeks leading up to it, we finally got Cena, Dolph Ziggler, Eric Rowan, Big Show, and Ryback against Rollins, Kane, Luke Harper, Mark Henry, and Rusev. Good lord, look at how many bodies are out there for this match, and I thought the Foreign Fanatics in '93 had too many guys at ringside. This high-stakes elimination match was full of twists and turns, which included the Big Show turning heel for the 20th time or so. Well, I never said we hadn't seen some of these twists and turns before. Just when it looked as if all hope was lost for Dolph Ziggler, suddenly...
Triple H's pockets in favor.
In one of the coolest debuts of the last 10 years, the man called Sting surprised everyone watching when he came to the ringside area to bring justice to the match, laying out Triple H and clearing the way for Ziggler to win. So, there you have it. The Authority was vanquished and never heard from again. I'm Bryan Zane.
Hold it, dweeb. This storyline's far from over yet, and you know it. Get to the good stuff.
Damn it, I was hoping you would notice. With the Authority gone, the night after Survivor Series saw the return of the anonymous Raw general manager? Damn it, really? We're back on that bullshit now? From one bad idea to another, the company retconned the reveal they had with Hornswoggle only 3 years earlier and brought back Michael Cole on a laptop. Triple H and Stephanie may have been gone, but everything else felt the same. Not only did the anonymous GM lean heel, everyone else associated with Hunter and Steph were still around, so you had the same faces take on the same heels without any stakes. Get a load of these shit matches, like Big Show and Rowan in a stairs match, or Ryback and Kane in a chairs match? Weak. The whole thing felt similar to when John Cena was a constant presence on TV despite having been fired in 2010 at the hands of the Nexus. It seems like WWE kept these angles going because they didn't know what to do with themselves once the singular driving force behind their universe was gone. And quite frankly, neither did I. With 2 days left in the year, Seth Rollins and friends held special guests Edge and Christian hostage, threatening to break Edge's neck again if John didn't exercise his power to bring back the Authority. With no other option, Cena finally broke the spell. And wouldn't you know it, Trips and Stephanie were at the ready with champagne. Boy, that felt spontaneous. And oh yeah, 1 week later, all of Cena's pals from Survivor Series got beaten up and fired. But son of a bitch, it was worth it for the... 5 weeks? We didn't see the Authority on our screens, but we still heard about them all the time and had all the same matches. Wow, what a relief. I guess WWE saw what Game of Thrones had going on at the time and wanted to replicate that success by hitting you over the head with sadness again and again. Maybe people would have cared more if the acting were a bit better and if there were a touch more nudity. I'm just saying, it worked for John Cena in Trainwreck. And of course, Cena ended up winning his friends' jobs back 2 weeks later. Everything was back to the way it was before on both sides, and nothing in the last few months had mattered. Yay, wrestling! We jump ahead to the 2015 Royal Rumble. Rollins, Lesnar, and Cena have a great triple threat for the title that sees Lesnar retain. Kane and the Big Show eliminate a bunch of people from the Rumble match, making everyone sad, only to be thwarted by Roman Reigns and his cool cousin The Rock, making everyone mad.
Yeah!
Please, Lord, don't blow when they eventually wrestle each other. By WrestleMania 31, the Authority was still around, but the impact of their involvement didn't seem nearly as big as before, mostly because Lesnar wasn't around enough as champion for his alliance with them to matter. At the biggest event of the year, the Big Show finally fulfilled his destiny by winning the second ever Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal, which would make him appear to be a bigger challenge when he'd be fed to Roman Reigns for the next few months. Sting carried on his feud with Triple H over the rotting and bloated corpse of WCW, their match ending when Helmsley won after some shenanigans from DX and the New World Order, the latter of which not making any fucking sense. Randy Orton returned to cement his status as a babyface, wrestling and beating Seth Rollins after arguably the coolest spot in the entire show.
Another curb stop. Oh my God!
Seth came back in the main event to finally cash in his Money in the Bank briefcase and win the championship. And make no mistake, 2015 was the year of Rollins. Not only did he spend most of the year retaining his title against guys like Orton, Ambrose, and Lesnar, he even became a double champ when he beat John Cena for the US title, thanks to help from Jon Stewart?
No, come on! What the hell did he do that for?
But in a couple of years, we'll see Trevor Noah show up for a spot, and people are going to crap on that because it can never be as good as it once was. You know how it goes. Rollins was rolling until Sting made a surprise return to challenge him for the championship at Night of Champions. Seth pulled double duty on the show, not only losing the US title back to Cena, but beating Sting after valiantly almost breaking his neck on a pair of buckle bombs. Just saying, Sting was treated better in a single segment in AEW this year than his entire run in WWE. And I guess some people want to see Kane fight for a title in 2015, right? After weeks of gaslighting Seth and the Authority, Kane let the Demon back out and challenged Rollins to the belt at Hell in a Cell. As much of a mark I was for early Kane, I just couldn't bring myself to be hyped up for this match, as Big Red lost the match and his job as Director of Operations in one fell swoop. Whatever long-term plans WWE might have had for Rollins as champion blew up in Dublin, Ireland in early November, when Seth suffered a serious knee injury and was on the shelf for 7 months, forced to vacate the title. A tournament was announced for Survivor Series, with Roman Reigns winning it all in the finals against former Shield mate Dean Ambrose. But the not-so-deadly game would end with another twist, one that, depending on how you felt about Reigns at the time, was met with either great exhaustion or uncontrollable mirth.
Sheamus is cashing in!
That's right, time for another screwy cash-in, this time from Sheamus as he beat Roman for the belt within minutes and aligned himself with the Authority. Jesus, when's this gonna end? With additional backing from Triple H and Stephanie, Sheamus formed the League of Nations with Rusev, Alberto Del Rio, and Wade Barrett, surely the most cursed supergroup in modern times. The Celtic Warrior would retain the title against Reigns at TLC, causing the big dog to snap and finally do what fans wanted to see for what felt like 100 years. It turns out all they had to do to get fans to like him was for him to kick the ass of the most despised heel in the company. Who knew? Reigns losing his cool at TLC was Act 1. For Act 2, it took 70-year-old Mr. McMahon taking a bump off the apron for fans to finally embrace Reigns as Roman knocked off Sheamus on a December episode of Raw to become the new champion. Ironically, it took place in Philadelphia, the same city that booed Reigns out of the building when he won the Rumble match earlier in the year. For one brief, shiny moment, WWE finally figured out what they had to do to get fans to like Roman as a main eventer, and it's gone. We cut to the 2016 Royal Rumble match, where Roman was forced to enter at number 1 and defend his title at the same time. After spending a good chunk of the match off-screen to sell a table spot, he finally came back and looked to have it won, only for Triple H to come in at number 30 and become the new champion. Dig that Vince McMahon shuffle. I always hated how this scene was narrated by commentary. After weathering all this adversity, for all intents and purposes, Roman Reigns was screwed out of the title when Triple H put himself in the match to win the belt. The Authority, by the way, are heels. And yet commentary treated this moment as if H was some conquering hero, not a power-hungry executive with an axe to grind against the champion. You know, like an evil authority figure?
Bryan, faces and heels don't exist in WWE anymore, remember? I'm not a face, I'm not a heel, I'm the ass kicker.
As Roman chased after the title yet again, the beginning of 2016 also saw the return of Shane McMahon, who shocked everyone when he crashed Vince McMahon's fake stupid award ceremony for Steph. Shane wanted to wrest control the company from his sister and brother-in-law, and after invoking a mysterious lockbox's leverage that would never be mentioned again, he was put in a match at WrestleMania against The Undertaker in Hell in a Cell. You know, I think the thumbnail that I made for the video when this news was first announced sums up my feelings about this perfectly. Ah yes, WrestleMania 32 in Dallas, also known as one of the worst manias in several years. But who am I kidding? For some fans, Eddie and Benoit hugging it out in Madison Square Garden was the last good one. The fans at AT&T Stadium saw Taker beat Shane in a cell match that was way more competitive than it had any right to be. But even though Shane lost a match where he'd gained control of Raw had he won, he was still allowed to do just that for many weeks because he was such a swell guy, until he was finally named the SmackDown GM in the second brand split. So yeah, great stakes they had there. But of course, the main event for this show saw Roman Reigns challenge Triple H for the title. What the Sam hell is that?
You are merely the blind sheep who follow. You exist to serve us.
For the love of God, please boo us in spite of our wicked cool entrance! In a match that went about 20 minutes longer than it should have, Roman finally beat Triple H to regain the championship, and even speared Steph for good measure. Triple H and Stephanie would continue to be involved in high-level angles for the next 2 WrestleManias. First against Rollins during his babyface run, then against Ronda Rousey and Kurt Angle in New Orleans, where Stephanie actually got some real comeuppance. But for all intents and purposes, WrestleMania 32 is considered by most to be the end of the Authority as we know it. Except for in 2018 when we became the Authority, I guess? I don't know. So after nearly 3 years in power, after dominating so many storylines and weakening the stock of so many of their wrestlers, the Authority finally accomplished its mission in doing... it was set to... What the hell was the point of the Authority anyway?
You know what? I kind of forget too.
Obviously they wanted to get some people over by feuding and or associating with them, but how well did they accomplish that? Well, Seth Rollins clearly benefited more than just about anyone. Dustin and Cody Rhodes got a big boost when they beat the Shield early on. They did succeed with Daniel Bryan, but only by a combination of dumb luck and undeniable fan support, completely in spite of what the company was trying to do creatively. And when it comes to the stars they made, that was pretty much it. John Cena and The Big Show didn't need the Authority to help to get a reaction from the crowd, and in Cena's case, he only did better for himself after he was done with them. His time as US champion in 2015 set a new benchmark for him as a performer and actually got some die-hard haters to finally come around to him. Dolph Ziggler was a conquering hero at Survivor Series but became an afterthought after his firing and rehiring. Ryback and Eric Rowan could have used a rub, but their time in the sun was limited for a variety of reasons. And Sting, well, they really fucked over Sting. Then there's Roman Reigns. What can I say about him that hasn't already been said? There's a laundry list of reasons as to why fans refused to embrace him as a top guy like they did with Bryan, but the biggest problem was they tried to make his story too much like Bryan's, which just didn't work for him. Roman needed to be an unbeatable badass, not someone who was constantly victim to swerves and betrayals. I know how unfair it is to compare any evil Authority angle to Austin McMahon, but seriously, it can't be that difficult to try and recreate what they did. That storyline showed it's not enough just for a babyface to defy the odds. The heel also has to eat shit every now and then so the fans are happy. Stephanie and Triple H got egg on their face once in a blue moon, sure, but it was so rare, so fleeting, and so ultimately inconsequential, those glimmers of hope might as well not even have happened. At the time I'm making this video, I'm deep into the final few months of WCW's existence, where a very similar angle is playing out with CEO Ric Flair and the Magnificent Seven. Now, obviously, the circumstances with WCW in 2001 are very different from modern-day WWE, but the similarities are still there. The heels would dominate again and again. They would swerve the good guys and put them up against impossible odds every week, with very few meaningful return shots by the babyfaces. Let me tell you, it's not been fun to watch, and all it's done is reminded me of how WWE messed it up in similar fashion. Yes, the Authority angle made a couple of stars. Yes, the angle led to some good matches here and there. But I still argue that it was a failure because, simply put, the ratings say it was. For as long as it dragged on, for the amount of repetition and frustration it caused for fans in that time span, in proportion to the amount of positive moments, it was just not worth the struggle.
So what I'm hearing you say is, the Authority made stars and got reactions. That's all I needed to hear. Case closed.
Sure, man, if that's what you gotta hear to be happy.
Hells yeah, I need to be happy. This year sucked. There were no live crowds because of the pandemic. I didn't get a big Mania match. NXT lost to AEW for most of the year. I got this nerd on YouTube making fun of me all the time. Let me have this.
Yeah, I gotta agree. 2020 was pretty crap. Alright, if it'll make you feel better, there were a couple of redeeming qualities to the Authority, and that's as far as I'm gonna go with it.
Yes, we got it on tape now. Gotcha, bitch.
Oh, you. Gamed again.
We are the providers and the protectors. We are the leaders, the chiefs and the generals. We are the absolute power. We own you. You are mere shells of humanity hanging on to the empty notion of